Welcome to Friend or Foe, the series where we pick apart the characters from some of our favorite games to figure out who is a friend, someone we don't need to worry will stab us in the back, and who is a foe, someone who would intentionally bring harm to the group if given the chance. I'm Josh Bearheart Hawk, and today we're celebrating Hilaria and the switch to the Gregorian calendar by discussing whether Duck from Telltale Games' The Walking Dead is really as innocent as he seems. As always, you can find a link in the description to a playlist for this series for those long nights where you just want to sit back, relax, and listen to a bunch of breakdowns all at once. Duck is a side character, and the son of Kenny and Katja in Season 1 of Telltale Games' The Walking Dead. He only lasts a couple of episodes before succumbing to the bite of a zombie. But in that time, he is seen as simultaneously one of the most lovable and annoying characters in the entire game. But what if I told you that there is a darker side to his character? A dark passenger he carries around and takes orders from. Sure, on the surface, he seems innocent enough. But behind those cold, dead eyes, there is a monster hiding in plain sight. We first meet Duck on Herschel's farm in the very first episode of the game, and from the get-go, something is off. Kenny tells Lee that while his son's name is Kenny Jr., they call him Duck, as he seems to always be active and making noises like a duck would. He also offers Lee a ride to Macon, saying that he would appreciate the company of someone who can knock a couple of heads together if he has to, and establishing a potentially violent streak that will come up later on as well. As they are talking, Herschel's son Sean comes over and says he's working on the fence, and Duck seems just a little too eager to help. Sean offers to let him sit on the tractor and be the foreman, who yells at him whenever he tries to take a break. And that would wind up being the last mistake he would ever make. The look on Duck's face says it all. He's excited for the chance to lord over someone, especially someone so much older than he is. But he doesn't just take the authority and let it go to his head. He uses the opportunity to try out something he's been itching to try for days. See, only a few days prior, Duck and his family were stopped at a gas station when a man grabbed Duck and tried to take him away. The rush of adrenaline had been immense, but before he could fight back or do anything on his own, his dad took over and ended the man's life right in front of him. It would become clear later on that the man was actually one of the monsters that had been taking over the world in the days since. But even so, Duck felt something light up inside him in that moment, and he couldn't get the idea out of his head. So, sitting on the tractor, Duck decided to try something. Turning the key that he'd managed to grab off of Sean when he wasn't looking, and pulling on the gear shifter that Sean told him about, Duck managed to pin the older man under the wheels of the tractor as a group of zombies attacked. He felt a thrill and a rush of excitement at what he'd done, and he was trying to get a closer look when another zombie grabbed his leg. His dad would come to the rescue, but the damage was done, as Duck had managed to put Sean in a position that he couldn't get out of. They had to leave the farm shortly thereafter, but getting out on the road only meant more chances for Duck to take people out and sate his thirst for blood. In the town of Macon, Duck would find several chances to mess with the group, and he was always on the lookout for an opportunity to take another life. He started by accidentally tripping in the street as zombies swarmed the group just after they arrived. But rather than drawing in someone like his mother to save him and potentially get bitten, he was saved in that instance by a woman named Carly. His anger at this travesty wouldn't go away anytime soon, and as he was rushed into a pharmacy to be checked on in safety, he vowed to get his revenge. For the most part, his time in the pharmacy was spent being doted on by his mom and dad, and he didn't have a chance to really get around or do anything. The first few minutes were rather exciting though, as an old man named Larry seemed to have some kind of issue with his heart, and Duck thought that he might get to see someone else die until Lee and the other adults ruined it by getting the keys to the area the medicine was stored in, ensuring Larry a little more life. Thankfully, an alarm went off, leading to several minutes of chaos and another death, though Duck would only hear about this one secondhand as his father and Lee talked about it later on. As disappointed as he was to have missed that moment, it was only a matter of time before another chance presented itself. A couple of months later, Duck and the rest of the group had made a nice little home out of a motel, and the young man reveled in any kind of action he could get. His mom had him pretty locked down over that time, but he'd seen the others pulling bodies out of the motel as they cleaned it up, and even got a little rush when his dad and Lee came out of the woods one day with a dying man and a mark named Ben. Ben was the perfect person to join the group because he was young, impressionable, and insecure. And when a group of bandits threatened the camp and demanded Ben give them medicine, Duck knew the moment was right for more chaos. He subtly helped Ben, without the boy's knowledge, to get meds and sneak them off to a spot outside the wall. He knew it was only a matter of time before someone noticed the missing supplies, and when that happened, it would mean chaos. And chaos is just what he got, as Lee worked to figure out who was stealing, and the bandits finally attacked. It all would have been perfect if not for his mother getting in the way. She thought she was helping, and he thought he could make sure that she was the one bitten. But it didn't go as planned, and he was the one to take the bite instead. The one thing that did work out in his eyes was that he did get to see his mother go before him, as she ended her own life before Lee put a bullet in him and ended what might have been the greatest streak of terror of all time. But now we must decide if this little supposedly harmless child is a friend or a foe. You'll notice I left a few things out from the retelling of the story, mostly for the sake of brevity, but now they'll need to come up to pass an accurate judgment. For one thing, there's the time at the St. John's Dairy, where we don't see a lot of Duck outside of his love of swinging and hanging out with a cow. While all of that seems like normal kid stuff, it's really all just a cover. The real Duck comes out when dinner is served, as he's gnawing down on Mark's legs, even after Lee comes in to confirm they're all eating a person. Sure, he could be just so engrossed in the meal that he doesn't hear all the shouts around him, but he could also just not care if he's eating man or beast. He seems just a little too upset about his mother pulling the plate away from him, and you can see the dark pits of hell reflecting in his eyes as he plots her demise for stealing his food. Then there's the eagerness to help Lee investigate the missing medicine. He shows up right as Lee finishes his conversation with Lily and reveals that he was eavesdropping on them. He says he wants to help, but there are two major red flags. The first and most obvious is how badly he wants to be close to the investigation. Serial killers and other psychotic types will often try to insert themselves into the investigations for their crimes. They want to know what the authorities know and try to steer things to show how much smarter they are than the detectives. This doesn't mean that everyone that gets close is guilty, but it gives a pretty good starting point when trying to determine guilt. Secondly, and in a much more diabolical setup, Duck tells Lee that he wants Lee to be Batman while Duck himself will be Dick Grayson. And notice the wording. He doesn't say he wants to be Robin. He specifically says Dick Grayson. Now, he could just be a big fan of the Batman comics and know all of the characters really well, But most younger kids, even if they really like a superhero, wouldn't call themselves Dick Grayson. They would say they want to be Robin, or whatever the name of the sidekick was in costume. This fact might just be innocuous, except for one little-known detail about Dick Grayson. See, there was a series of comics released in the early 2000s that acted as a sequel to a storyline from the 1986 miniseries called The Dark Knight Returns. In this newer series, Batman, The Dark Knight Strikes Again, and DK2, Dick Grayson winds up betraying Batman and becoming a Joker-like character as revenge for Batman firing him years earlier. Now, the series isn't considered canon and wasn't very well received by fans, but it's worth bringing up because it just seems a little too on the nose for him to use that specific character. Perhaps the devs were trying to send a secret message about who Duck really was at his core. Then there's Kenny's anger issues, something Duck would have noticed and something that could have been passed down from father to son. What if Duck inherited that problem from his dad, but learned to channel his anger when he saw how people reacted to Kenny? Maybe he got a little bit of Koch's brains to go along with Kenny's temper, and has a dark passenger inside him that would rival someone like Dexter, who was popular when the first game released. Is it a coincidence that the show Dexter ended in 2013, the same year that Telltale's The Walking Dead Season 1 released? At this point, I think I've made my case for Duck to be one of the biggest foes of the series. He comes off as this innocent kid, but behind those cold eyes lies the mind of a madman, one that each and every member of the group should fear. Perhaps the world dodged a bullet when that zombie got a bite of Duck. Of course, since this is the internet and all, I should probably throw in a Happy April Fool's Day for anyone who made it this far in wondering what in the world this video was. I actually came up with the concept of an evil duck in the shower one morning as I wondered how Duck could have accidentally started up the tractor that pinned Sean down. And the creative side of my brain kind of took over from there. Hopefully you enjoyed the video and maybe even learned a thing or two along the way. Duck, in reality, would likely be a friend if this was a more serious breakdown, but I want to know what you think in the comments below about him and suggestions for other characters that you'd like to see broken down in the future. If you're new here, these videos are usually a little more serious, though they are still a lot of fun, and I've got a whole list of them for you to check out after you subscribe to Lost in Games here on YouTube. For those who want to go the extra mile and help me keep making this kind of content, I've got channel memberships, a Patreon, and a membership program over on my website. Chipping in a couple of dollars a month helps me keep going and avoiding taking sponsorships in my videos, and joining at any tier on any platform is always highly appreciated. That's all I've got for this one. I want to thank you all for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.